Good. Okay, I'm in finally. Sorry, a couple of tech issues. Hi everybody. Just gonna wait to see some people to come in and say hi. Oh, hi Craig. Hi Craig. Good. Uh, good to see you. Hi Pauline. Good. I hope you're all okay. Hope you're all feeling okay. Hi Ingrid. Hi Heather. Sorry I had to rechange this from a few days ago. Some of you know who know me knows my health's not great at the best time, but my health's been a real bitch at the moment, and so I've just got to kind of run with it. And but I'm not doing too bad today. I've got my Do No Harm t-shirt on. Thank you very much to Linda Michaels and the Do No Harm team. I love it. It's very nice. Thank you very much. Good. Okay, so what I'm gonna have a chat with you. Hi everybody. Hi Nicola. Hi Jetta. Hi Laura. Hi Maya. Hi Jesse. Good. Hi everybody. Well, how are you all? How's your day going or been, depending on where you are in the world? I hope you're okay. I'm still not home at the moment, as you can see. For those that follow me, I'm looking after my friend's place, and they're Afghans. They've gone on a month cruise to Asia, a whole month. So I've been away from home for a month, but I will be back at Dog Centered Care HQ the next time I see you, which will be with the amazing Robert Faulkner Taylor, who's coming in on I can't remember, I think it's the 4th of February, something like that. Anyway, it's in the events thing, to talk about the added trauma that can come along with medical and clinical interventions. It's going to be a really good one. I've got some amazing speakers lined up. I haven't had a chance to put them all into the event tab yet, but keep an eye on it. Because there's some great speakers on. Okay, right. So what I wanted to talk about tonight, and thank you so much for all the support for the other Facebook lives I've done. It only took me 3 years to get around to doing lives on my own. That's a big thing, right? Yeah, the feedback's been amazing, and I really appreciate it. And this will be the last one for a little bit, but I'll come back and do some bits and bobs here and there as I think about different things to look at. So in that first chat, we looked at why we need to consider our relationship with training, actually, and think about some of the things that motivate us regarding thinking about turning up to influence the behavior of another sentient being. Last time I spoke to you, we talked about how we support others to consider these things and our own lived experiences and that kind of thing. And today I want to focus in on something that's very specific, that's very important to the lived experience of all of us. That is safety and relief as two principles. Now, these are big topics, and anybody who's heard me educate before, I've literally given kind of whole presentations just on one topic, and even then we just scratched the surface. But I just want to kind of offer some things to consider today. And also Molly is going to come and show us a few things as well. That's puppy Molly. She's not with us anymore because she's grown up Molly now. She's 2.5 now, but we're going to see her as a puppy. Some of you might have seen the video I'm going to show you with Molly. I've also got another couple of videos to show you as well when we get around to that. So, safety and relief. Let's just start off with relief. I talk about relief a lot. I might even have it on my tombstone. What a relief, finally, to go. But relief, let's just think about relief. Now, for me, relief's probably one of the most important words in the psychology of behavior for me. There's different ways to think about relief, but when we think about relief in more kind of human psychology terms, we tend to think about relief in two ways. One is what we call the kind of the near miss relief sensation, that kind of thing when you just go to knock off your glass of wine and then you manage to grab it, right? That's a near miss. It's like, so that sense of relief in the moment. And also, you know, we've all had it, right? Where we're down to do a scary thing and then it gets cancelled at the last minute and we get that sense of relief, The other form of relief is episode completed relief or task completed relief. And that is when you're experiencing a negative thing and then it finishes. So a good example like that, especially this time of year for us in the UK, thinking about doing our tax returns, right? It's an unpleasant process, and you get that sense of relief afterwards. So there's a lot of studies into these things now, looking at those two forms of relief, and even those terms are being made into more nerdy terms, like counterfactual is the kind of near miss relief stuff, and temporal is the task completed relief. I want to think about it a little bit simpler though for us, because for me, anything that we're experiencing that is negative, one of the whole reasons of having pain, physical pain, emotional pain, social pain, doesn't matter, or or discomfort, is to let us know, well, this isn't nice, so I want to not feel it. And that is an element of relief seeking, if you think about it. A lot of the things that we seek then is looking for relief. So whether you're turning to that kind of pain relief when you've got a toothache, whether you're trying to kind of think about, I can't wait for this to be over, a kind of relief, you might be thinking that now. So that's the thing about relief. So this is a really important principle though, isn't it? Because if the behaviors you're giving are a form of relief seeking, then if you can't get relief for what you're seeking, then you're not going to feel safe a lot of the time. And this is the thing I think we need to think about with dogs when we're supporting them, really, is to think about what it is that they might be seeking from a relief point of view, and how important that relief is. We think about three different ways of thinking about relief then. One is when we get the relief we seek, and it's done. It's that kind of full stop relief. And I term that as being absolute relief. It's absolute relief, so that we can move on from that. Another thing to consider is the things that we do to give ourselves temporary relief. Temporary relief, that's quite well talked about even with human psychology circles regarding emotional relief. Temporary relief is that respite. It gives you that kind of temporary relief. So for example, using the pain thing, if you've got dental pain, taking pain relief would give you temporary relief, because when that wears off, it's likely to come back. Absolute relief would be going to the dentist and getting your root canal done, for example. The worst scenario for me, and this is really sad, is no relief. And no relief comes. And that's even more difficult when you've tried reaching out to what is supposed to be a supportive social network, but still no relief comes. And I think this really fits in for me about the three things that I talk about a lot, I know, that I think unite us all through our lived experience, whether you're a human or a dog or a cat or a horse or whatever. The first is to feel heard, how much we recognize, we talked about this in the first chat I did, about recognizing behavior as an expression of need. The need for connection, the need for safety, the need for relief. And how challenging it is when we don't feel heard. Nobody, especially when we're trying to communicate need, wants to feel ignored or dismissed. We definitely don't want to feel corrected, which is a term that's used a lot, I know. Somebody else is telling us, well, what you're trying to communicate is not valid. Second thing that unites us all is the need to feel safe. We're going to explore that a little bit in a moment. And then that we all need this. The third thing is this sense of needing relief, seeking relief, and how we try and find that. We're always thinking about that when we think about the power of those seeking circuits and how often they're looking for a bit of a way out from the uncomfortable stuff. This stuff can be really helpful, by the way. When you get relief, that's a great sensation. And especially if you know you can get relief and what that feeling feels like, that can be quite good for motivating you to do more stuff. It can also flip the other way, of course. If you have that near miss form of relief, it can make you anxious about having it again. I know many people who have been in for example, near miss car accidents that have They can see the destruction around them, but they're okay. But that can really affect you thinking, is it safe for me to do anything again? And actually, this ties in a lot with a lot of the studies we know about the effect on dogs who have very heavy aversives, especially shock collars, because the relief they get from not having it leads to anxiety about making sure they don't have that again. So all these things are really important. So relief is a really important word. So when we're thinking about changing the behavior of another, we really need to make sure that what we're doing is still providing the safety that they were potentially seeking, and importantly, the relief they were seeking. And this is why it's, of course, it's important for us to make sure that we're looking at all the physical components for dogs, because quite often what they're seeking is relief from pain, right? A lot of temporary relief from a doggy point of view are a lot of the behaviors that we see as being quite problematic, excess chewing, barking, digging. It's desperately trying to find relief. Temporary relief in itself is a good thing, right? And again, there's been some studies about dogs who are in rescue shelters, who get a chance to go to a home and have a couple of days there and then go back, and how they seem to seems to be good for their mood, and that temporary relief, that respite is enough just to kind of get that nervous system back a little bit. It's a little bit like having a really stressful job, stressful kids, stressful partners, and just getting into that nice big hot bubble bath, right? And that nice glass of Prosecco, whatever it is that you like. That's temporary relief, and it's important because it means that we can do it. It's temporary because, of course, those stresses are still there when we return. Temporary relief becomes problematic when it becomes inappropriate. When we think about some behaviors, especially if that glass of Prosecco turns into a bottle of Prosecco. A lot of the things I think about my own drug addiction back in the day. I've talked about this, I think, in the last one, about my own breakdown and my own drug addiction. It's interesting when people have a very set view of addiction, specifically, especially substance abuses, about somehow it's about how it makes you feel. And yes, it does, whether you drink or take drugs or whatever it is that happens to be the thing that gives you a bit of a high, it does give you a nice feeling. But that's not what motivates. What motivates, in my experience, and I think a lot of the way of looking at these things now is supportive of this, is two things. One is the sense of relief. You're seeking relief from something, which is often your trauma, your past, or whatever. And more often than not, the second thing is the lack of secure attachments and connections. You've detached yourself in such a way. And I think these things are important. And I see the same with some kind of recurring problematic behaviors with doggies a little bit. So relief's important then, right? So what I love about talking about relief is one of those words, right? Because you almost want to go, relief. So when I'm talking to caregivers, when I talk in terms of relief, well, they're seeking relief, right? Because that's why they've got me in, to see their dogs. They get the notion of relief, about how important it is to have relief. When we start thinking in terms of relief, it's a lot easier to sell management and adaptation plans, to give kind of stress detoxes. The wonderful Diane Garrett talks about this a lot in her stress detox book, the importance of having these kind of cortisol holidays. So yeah, relief. It's a really important thing when we think about it. We need some relief sometimes, physical, emotional, social, mental. We need that relief. So, and I say the worst thing is no relief. And that would potentially come into that notion of learnt helplessness, in inverted commas, and all these kind of things are connected. So relief, that's what I want to talk about initially, just to touch on the notion of relief. So it's quite a big topic about. So we want to be getting feedback for the dog. Everything's a request as far as I'm concerned. We can call them commands or even cues, if we want to think of it from a training point of view. And by the way, just a little point on cues. I see a lot of stuff talking about the difference between commands and cues. That is just semantics. When we cue a behavior, if we are expecting it, period, well, it is a command. That's the point. A cue is, I'm going to cue this behavior. And what we need to think is, I need to now wait for the feedback. And that's really important. Everything's an invitation for me. Everything's a request, if you like. And then we've got to wait for the feedback, because that tells us about the ability of the dog, maybe we'll talk about doggies now, and their ability to be able to do that, and what their experience might be. When we start working with dogs, especially with challenging presentations, we need to be putting in layer on layer. We shouldn't be doing big chunks like, how is that? What's the feedback? How's this? What's the feedback? Can I sense from you, or can I see perhaps physiological signs that that might be a relief for you? And you know, changes in breathing, changes in their tension through their shoulders, changing in their body posture, changing in all sorts of things. These kind of things give us an idea of whether we're providing some relief or not. We've got to be careful with reinforcement training specifically, that we're not falling into the error of just changing the behavior because we can, it's a powerful tool, and not providing the safety and relief that the dog was seeking, because we just got a behavior that we find more appropriate instead. And this, I think, leads to some of the recurrence of behaviors down the line, because the dog's like, I'm trying my best based on this thing that I'm being expected to do in order to get that primary resource for me, but actually I can't now. You know, my need for relief is too great, or my need for safety is too great. So that's the thing about relief then. Relief is a very important word. And it's very connected to safety, I think, because as I say, you know, one of the things about feeling safe is that you can get the relief you seek, and especially emotionally and socially. So I want to talk about safety, and I want us to touch on this in a few ways, and I want to share a couple of things with you and show you a couple of videos as well. So safety, it's a big thing, right? Talked about a lot more now, and I think we have to recognize the different bits of safety. So when we think about safety in another, when we think about safety in our loved ones, our dogs, we tend to have a bit of a physical bias. In other words, we're looking for information, feedback about physical safety, because that's what our brain can evidence base very easily. Oh yeah, my dog looks physically safe. My child looks physically safe. The problem is what we know about the individual, and we know a lot about this about dogs, and I'll come on to that in a minute, about how we can make some of these connections. Our own brain is just as, if not more, focused on emotional and social safety. And this is why you can be safe physically and not feel safe. The wonderful Rachel Leather, who specializes in animal trauma, has this great line, which is, you can't teach safety, you can't train safety, because the other has to feel it. Now, you can teach physical safety. I could teach you as best I can to not stick your fingers in the plug sockets, and not to put your hand on the iron, or whatever it is. I can communicate that with you. But I can't teach you how to feel safe, because you have to feel it. And that's the importance of emotional and social safety. So let's think about emotional safety. There's two really important parts of emotional safety. The first is feeling safe to even feel in the first place. Now, that might seem a bit odd, but it's really important. And actually, if you think about it, there will be situations where you've felt bad about even feeling. This is a big thing about trauma, of course, and what it can do. This is a big thing about experiencing abusive relationships, or being in relationships even that don't allow you freedom to express yourself without feeling ignored, shut down, disapproved of, invalidated, you know. So actually, the first bit of emotional safety is feeling safe to even feel. This is tricky, right? Because some of the things we talked about, I think it was last time, about the societal view of behavior and the need for some kind of conformist norm, this notion that you can feel how you like, but you just can't show it, is problematic for many of us, myself included, about learning about how to feel truly emotionally safe, actually, and to feel validated, and to feel that those kind of feelings are warranted and valued and valuable. So that's the first bit about emotional safety. Sorry if I'm a little bit waffly tonight, guys. I'm kind of ODing on Lemsips at the moment. So the second bit about emotional safety is not only just about how feeling safe to feel it, and this bit is really relevant for dogs and animals, I think, more generally, companion animals, especially animals that find their way around us humans. And that is feeling safe to communicate how you feel, without being ignored and dismissed and shut down. And many of us have found ourselves in relationships where that's been problematic, whether that's at school, at home, relationships at work. I gave a talk at the London Vet Show last November, talking about safety and this type of notion about safety. And I was talking about some of this stuff, and it was interesting. At the Q&A afterwards, a couple of the vets and vet nurses spoke about within their practices how management had made it clear that don't get involved, don't get attached, don't get emotionally connected, be professional. I'm sure colleagues in rescue, in shelters, have heard the same thing from line management. The problem is you will get connected. You will get emotionally involved. You will be affected. But now you feel you can't talk about it. Because just by saying that, they've created an emotionally unsafe working culture. Dogs from a young age, because of the primary focus on a compliance, obedience-based training, but just training more generally, where's their ability to feel safe to communicate stuff when they're being, where their forms of communication are being either shut down or changed or shifted all the time? Where's the ability to share things? And I think I see behavior with dogs, especially, I've shared this analogy before, maybe on these chats, I can't remember, but as painting a picture. The wonderful Denise O'Moore done some great graphics for me at the conference I gave, the conference talk I gave at Daniel Shaw's conference back in November, and of a dog with, painting a picture, because that's how I see behavior. What we don't want to be doing, and for me, I want a dog to behave as they need to behave. I don't want to influence that too much now. I work a lot with potentially dangerous dogs, so of course we have to mitigate around that. But actually, the more freer the dog is to paint their picture, actually, the more safer they are to be around, actually. And what we don't want to be doing is grabbing that brush off them every 2 minutes and saying, I'll paint the picture for you. And that's what we've experienced as well. Many of us growing up is other people grabbing our brush and painting our picture, our version of behavior, our version of safety, our version of normal. So emotional safety, really important, especially this thing about feeling safe enough to be able to communicate and to be heard. Social safety is emotional and social safety are very close, but social safety is quite a complicated thing, of course. And actually being able to be sociable takes a lot of stuff to go on, right? Even for us, it's amazing, really, how many dogs I work with who it seems to be a problem with the dog and other dogs, for example, or novel people. And actually, the more we work with the dog, it isn't about that per se. It's about the general state of that dog's nervous system and their ability and their kind of relationship, if you like, with sensory input, which is the primary thing for a lot of these dogs. I want you to think about yourself. If you're not feeling very well, if you're stressed, if you're tired, you have less bandwidth to be sociable. In fact, we've all been there, right? You're feeling like crap, you're hungover, whatever it is, you're in town, you see a friend, and now you're hiding behind the newspapers because you just cannot have that conversation. And these are safe social interactions. It's not like you have to do a lot of extra stuff there to kind of process this stuff. It's interesting how, and I'll come on to that in a minute, actually. So yeah, social safety is really important. The ability to feel that all the things that go on, all the vulnerability that goes on to be social, that actually you can feel safe doing that. And that can be tricky sometimes when, again, we've had bad experiences of not feeling safe, not feeling that those social connections are particularly secure and supportive. This comes into attachments, of course, and I think this is very important. I mentioned earlier a little bit about the science. I think it's important to think about how much we've learned. A lot of the stuff I learned back in my human psychology degree, like 100 years ago, because I'm not old, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, Was done on studies on animals, you know, attachment theory. A lot of some of those kind of light bulb moments came from experiments with rhesus monkeys and monkeys more generally, and rats, because they're quite a social species. The social pain hypothesis, dear old Panskep, back in the 50s or whatever, and Daniel Shaw talks a lot about this actually, was done on dogs, you know, puppies taken from mom, distraught, injected with a mild opioid, seemed to be okay. The hypothesis being maybe social pain hurts like physical pain. And now with people like Matthew Lieberman, I know I've mentioned his book quite a few times, but his book Social, it's a bit of a heavy read, but it's a brilliant read. I love it. And him and his colleagues, Naomi, I can't remember her name, surname, but have kind of proven this with MRI research, looking at the part of the brain that fires up for social rejection, same part that fires up for physical pain. Because pain's our friend, right? They say it doesn't always feel like it, but in as far as it's telling us something, you know, things hurt for a reason. Emotional stuff hurts for a reason. It's our relationship with these things that are really important. Our relationship to guilt, for example. I talk about this a lot because obviously, especially when we work with clients, they feel guilt because when they go through that awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance that we talked about last time, and they're like, yeah, I get it now. My dog's not being a dick. My dog's not being difficult, naughty, dominant, whatever. My dog is actually stressed. My dog's struggling. My dog's in pain. And then they feel guilty about what they've done before because they didn't know any different. But it's our relationship to that feeling of guilt that's important. If we allow guilt to kind of internalize for us, it keeps us chained to the past. And that can be really destructive because that feeling stays stuck with the past. Well, guess what? We can't go back to the past. So if we change our relationship with those feelings, we can recognize, right, I've learned something really important here, very deep, very visceral. So that's what guilt feels like. And actually, I can make a choice about how I use that feeling to motivate me and drive me moving forwards, as in, do you know what? I'm not going to do that again because I've learned that and I can't change that, sadly. You know, everything we do today is about the betterment of our future selves. Everything we do today with the dogs we have now is not about that dog. It's about the future versions of those dogs, whether that's as a caregiver, whether that's as a professional. Oh God, I look at dogs that I saw a couple of years ago and I wish I could see them now because I know more, right? And I do better. And I don't feel guilty about that. I just recognize that's what keeps motivating me to drive me forward. So changing our relationship is what it's about. Changing our relationship to feelings is really important. Changing our relationship to our trauma, our relationship to our judgments. We talked about judgments last time. You know, we're very quick to judge, and it's hard not to have that drive our response, but we can change our relationship with judgment. We can try not to become judgmental and let it drive our response. That's the gift that we have as a human. And actually, when you think about trying to work in a compassionate, empathetic way, many of us in the room have been, you know, we get things thrown at us, don't we? Snowflakes, cookie pushers, too soft, you know, whatever. But actually, I think having compassion turning up regardless of how we might judge a situation, but we'll turn up anyway. Having empathy, even in difficult situations for dogs and people that might not have done particularly, you know, positive things, I think is actually the pinnacle of human existence. It's easy just to react to instant judgment. It's easy to just react in a very in the moment way. So it takes time and practice to actually have that and be that. So if you are that, pat yourself on the back because you're way more than just being soft. You're somebody who's able to navigate the animal side of us and really allow that more reflective, compassionate, supportive human side to come to the fore. Okay. Talk about relief. Let's talk about safety. So we talk about safety, physical, emotional, social safety. Now, so if the other has to feel safe, how can we learn about what it is that they need to feel safe? And this is why I want to show you a couple of videos to have a little look at here. So let me just get my My thing's up here. Where are we? Here we go. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos here. Now, I've got my learn, support, teach, that I'm going to try and do things in that order. Learn, support, teach. So learn from the dog first. Support what we've learned. When I say learn from the dog, not just what they're doing behaviorally, but learn as much as we can about their lived experience, gait analysis, all the kind of information we can, so we can start to evidence base. In that moment of evidence basing, we have to let go of the objective, and this is just my opinion, and embrace more the subjective and the anecdotal, because that's where the lived experience lives. So we have to feel brave and think, okay, that's what I've seen. Oh, put a question mark there. This is Sarah Fisher's question mark. I'd like to credit Sarah for that. Oh, there's a question mark there. Oh, yeah, that's the 4th time I've seen that now in that context. Maybe that's the thing for this dog. Then we move from the subjective and anecdotal. We need to start to bring it back into the objective, and that's where good data comes, and we can start classifying it there and putting these things in. So, so we need to learn as much as we can. And for me, there's 3 really important words that are foundated in safety: processing, engagement, and exit. Processing, engagement, and exit. I'm just going to touch on these 3 words very quickly. So processing, that's what you need to process, right? In order to feel safe. It's pretty simple. Most of what we process should be happening through, when we think about that sensory integration process, how our brain processes information through our senses. Ideally, if you're quite well regulated and you're in a good place, a lot of the stuff you're processing is happening subconsciously, and that's how it should be, really, because it would be exhausting otherwise if you have to process everything. If you're more sensitive to something, if you're already quite anxious, if you're already unwell, if you're already feeling vulnerable, then you're more aware of stuff and you need more time to process things. And if that isn't given, then you can get overwhelmed very quickly. We also need to think about the things that stop us from processing very well. Again, if you're in pain, if you're tired, if you're stressed, you can't process so well. And also we have to think about the quality of information we process. When we're able to be in a well-regulated state, we're more likely to data collect and think, oh, what's going on there? Let me think about it. When you're in a more heightened state, you're more likely to potentially be looking at threat evaluating. The problem with threat evaluation in a conscious way, especially, well, guess what? You're seeking threat. I know many humans who live a lot of their life like that, and it's very hard for them because they're not looking in a data collecting way in a way that I might. They're thinking, oh, that might be a threat, that might be a threat. And that nervous system is just so spicy all the time. And we see that with some doggies, of course. So processing is really important, the ability to process. Engagement. Engagement is another part of the foundation safety, really, for me, which is the ability to know you have the choice and the agency to engage in a way that suits you, if you choose to engage at all. Not just social engagement, by the way, how you choose to physically engage, sexually engage, mentally engage, emotionally engage. This is about having the bandwidth to engage, what it feels like to engage, how it needs to be, what that engagement needs to be for you. And then exits. It's knowing that if you do engage in any of those ways, you feel confident that you can exit. This is really fundamental to go for these. Now, this isn't a linear thing. You process, you engage, you exit. They can all happen at the same time, in different orders, whatever. It's just they're individual things that often go together, but they're individual when you think about it. Most trauma, if not all trauma, actually, is very much kind of founded in lack of agency over engagement and exit, when you think about it. You're forced to engage with a thing that you didn't want to, and you can't exit. That is in itself traumatic. Whether or not it becomes traumatizing can be different, of course. But this is important for us. And oh my God, the number of people that have social anxieties can pinpoint back to times, often in adolescence, when where their agency and choice over engagement and exits was taken away from them. The classic, get down here now from your room. You must stay at the dinner table. You must be at this social event. Now, most of us have gone through that. It's awkward, right? And most of us muddle through. But many people who are adults talk back about, do you know what? It really affected me deeply. And my brain learned, can't feel safe socially or emotionally because I'm being forced into engagement and exit. And guess what happens then when you become an adult and you have more agency? It's no surprise then that you think, well, the easiest thing is not to engage at all, actually. So these things are important. And how often then do we think about doggies then, who are already quite sensitive? Most dogs are when they're young. Some dogs are more so. Being sensitive isn't a defect, is it? Just means you're more sensitive to something. We all know that some dogs just out of the box seem to be a little bit more sensitive about stuff, and that means they need more time for stuff. But guess what? Engagement keeps coming first. They get put into engagement situations, whether it's environmental or social, and they can't exit because they're on a lead. So it's no wonder they struggle with it. And even at a young age, we can learn this stuff. And this is what I want to show you in this video now. So I'm going to share my screeny pups, and I'm going to give a little doofy what's it, a little commentary on this one. Some of you might have seen this at the Pup Fest that I did recently, but anyway, here we go. Hopefully you can see that. Share screening. Get rid of that. Right. So here's Molly mooching along. Oh, why is that not? Where there you go. Great, good. Mooching along now. Molly, to give you some reference here, she came to us at 16 weeks. She'd had a couple of homes already. Very bitey, very pulley on the lead, very jumpy uppy. Now, normally we look at those things in isolation. How do we deal with the biting? How do we deal with jumping up? How do we deal with the pulling? Whereas we thought, where's the fizziness coming from in the first place? Why is she struggling in almost everything that's happening for her? So we had to learn from her first. We had to learn from her about what her processing, engagement, and exit preferences are. So there's a bigger story here about Molly. Maybe I could do a proper Molly special, but I was taking her, by the way, I've paused the video, so don't worry about it freezing, I've just paused it. So this is where I was taking her out on little walks, on a long line, harness, and just really getting her used to mooching. Within a week or so, the pulling reduced, because guess what? Pulling is a clear sign for me that nervous system's a bit fizzy. And I'm learning from her here about what in the environment she needs. So she's having a nice mooch here. She's having a proper sniff. You know, her nose is down. She's learning about mooching. She does love a mooch, so that's great. We're having little mooch pups together. And we're just walking along, and she's sniffing quite normally here. And that's my first sign there. Did you see it? That little glance to the left. Something caught her eye, literally. So, okay, let's just have another look. Mooching along. Now, we'll just keep mooching. And then in a mo, when she's had a sniff, she really looks again and she stops. She's looking at me. Now, I'm talking to her, of course. Now, this is a check-in. I'm not giving her food for a check-in because I don't want to muddy the waters there. I want her to know, oh, you checked in with me and I'll respond. It's a natural thing, right? I don't want to start thinking I'm going to check in for food. I wanted to know I'm going to check in for safety. I wanted Molly to learn she was safe and I was her return to safety, and that I could help her to have a big voice so I could hear her. So she's put her brakes on here, and you're going to see me move a little bit. Remember, everything's an invitation. So I'm going to move to see if she's able to come. Are you ready to come? No. She says, no, I need to stay here. I need to do some processing. And if I look over here, I can see the traffic and also some roadworks. And this is one of the first times I really started to see that she might have an issue with trafficy, roadworky stuff. So we're having a conversation here. I said, do you want to come? And she's like, no, I need to stay here. Now, how many times do puppies put the brakes on and then they're cajoled to move forwards or foods move forwards? What she's saying to me very clearly here is, I can't engage directly. But I do need time. I do need time to process. Processing is a form of engagement. Now, this is interesting, this bit here. Do you see the scratching? Now, why is that interesting? Because having learned from people like Amber Batson, Sarah Fisher, others about myofascial release after a bit of tension. It could be just because she's scratching, right? Who knows? But I just thought it was interesting she had it there because she's clearly feeling a bit tense. Bit of displacement sniffing until she finds something that's actually worth sniffing there. But watch this beautiful 180 maneuver. She's just swung round. She wouldn't keep moving forwards because I invited her to do that. And now she's chose her exit and she's off. That's her exit. Now, the other side of this park is another road, but with trees. And so she can't see them. But it's interesting. She's mooching along here, but she's not doing it quite the same way. She stopped again, not sure. And then she's looking at me. And now her nose is twitching and her ears are going. She can hear the traffic the other side, but she can't see it. So she's giving me all this information. And we have a little bit of time here. I'm talking to her, of course. I'm like, what do you need? How's things? Are you okay? Do you want to do something? I'm giving these invitations about movement. Do you need to move this way? Do you need to move that way? She's like, no. I don't need an exit right now. I just need to process. Her nose is going nuts. So I think she's processing quite well. It's not like she's shut down or she's looking to flee. It's also interesting how she's kind of orientated herself to almost be side on to both sides. She's sat down now. Didn't ask her to. How many times do puppies sit down? And we just like, come on, keep going. She's like, no, this is where I need to be right now. There's a lot of stuff to process here. I can hear stuff. I can smell stuff. I love her nose is twitching. I think that's really cool for us. So she's having a good old snips. I'm going to say hello. I'm going to try and make some engagement with her now. I'm going to be like, hey, it's okay. How's things? And I'm going to give her a little tickle. And she's going to let me know she doesn't want it. So she's like, okay. And I'm like, do you want it? No, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Very clear engagement signals again. I'm going to say, okay, do you want to exit this way? She's like, no, I need to carry on here a second. Okay, I'm just going to wait her out. And I'm just going to keep giving her invitations. Do you want to go this way? Yeah, I'll go that way. Okay, cool. And she's chosen her exit. Okay, so bloop. I'm just going to share my screen a minute. So that's just a bit, even from a young puppy, right? That's even from a young pup. Now, I believe with Molly, because she was quite fizzy, she's now 2.5. So this is for anybody who's got young dogs. We live right on a beach. Beautiful. I've got loads of video footage of her learning about the beach. It was only when she was 18 months, 2 years old, that she could do the beach and not have too much support from us. It takes that time, right? It takes that time. And they're very sensitive Labradors, actually, very sensitive, because we bred them to be that. Mainly because they have to be really aware of the social environment, I guess, because they have to share the back of that Land Rover with all the grumpy spaniels, I don't know, on the shoot. But anyway, but even at a young age then, so I had to bear witness to that for her and let her know you will have the time to process. How many young dogs are just constantly put in situations where they don't have time to process properly? There's huge expectations put on them to walk in a certain way and do a certain thing. Engagement keeps coming. They've got to try and work that out and work how they can do it. Many dogs do. I'm like, isn't it amazing how adaptive dogs are? Some dogs, though, it's no wonder when they get to 8 or 10 months that their brain's thinking, right, I'm predicting engagement's coming first, and I don't feel comfortable with it. So I need to tell the dog to back off or whatever. I've got another video here to show you. I want to show you here. Now, these videos were done by a client of mine before I started working with them, and they sent them over for me. But I wanted to share them with their permission, of course, which I have, because they're really good to show this again. You can show this again. So this is and share my screen again. So this is a foreign import dog, an overseas rescue dog down on the beach. This is really clear. Look, so the dog's there. There we go. Is it going to play with it? Having a good old time. Dog comes over. Oh, I can't engage. Gonna exit. Oh, I don't know what happens now. But the other dog just stands still. And this dog's like, oh, I can process you. Great. Let me process. I do like the processing. I want to sniff your bum. That's fine. Now I need to exit. Great. Exit. And then it's like, oh, you're still here. Right. Okay. Engagement. Can't deal with the engagement though. I need to exit. Now. Now, talking about relief, so he looks for his dad. He's seeing what's going on, checking with dad. Not sure about the human either. This dog doesn't like novel situations very much. Really unsure. Checking in with mom, who's doing the video, checking over there. But look at the relief. That's relief, right? It's like, off we go. Really clear, right? When you see it, you really see it. And this is important for me when working with, in inverted commas, reactive dogs, because I'm quite lucky. I've got a 2-acre space that I use to do observations, and the number of dogs who seem to kind of kick off on sight when they see another dog, when you slow things down, give them more space, it's amazing how many exit options they start to give you, how you see those exits really clearly. And they're like, oh, that relief comes in. Oh, great, you saw that. Great. I just need to move this way, please. And I need to move that way, please. And how many dogs then, once they know that engagement isn't going to be the first thing, they want to process. How many dogs do you work with, or you have a dog like this maybe, who dog's there, wah, 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 wah. And then when the dog's come past, they have to slip in behind with that air stream, almost an air scent from behind. With those dogs, we need to let them know you can sniff first, actually. A lot of these dogs have an unhealthy relationship with visual input because that's dialed right up. Here's another one here with the same dog. Same doggy. Share screen. Now, this is the dog in a space where they're introducing the dog to other family members and a dog. and doing a lot of the stuff that people do, but of course, because they didn't know any different. You know, since I'm working with them, we've changed these things up. The amount of conflict in the dog, because the humans are just interested in engagement. They're like, have a treat from me, let me touch you. Whereas the dog's like, I just need to process stuff and I need an exit. So let's have a look here. So he's mooching along. It's interesting there how he almost takes an equidistant point, having a look. Bit of displacement sniffing there, I think is what I call do sniffing. So like, have a little look. Now he's an overseas dog, so he loves food. So he'll come and take food from somebody. Yeah, great. I'll take your food, mate. Take your food. See how his tail's tucked. He's unsure about this. Oh no, don't touch me. I need to exit, because the guy's gone to do engagement. Checking in with dad, who is becoming his safe, secure. Going over now. Want to sniff hands? No, because you're going to touch me. I just want to sniff. The hands didn't have to be there. He could have sniffed. A lot of sensitive dogs, I find, want to come and sniff from the side or behind because they can process without engagement. So he's like, okay, any more food on the floor? There's a dog there now. I'm feeling under a bit of pressure. And this is interesting for me. He just turns around and sits down with his back to this. It's almost like I can't engage with that. It's a bit like Molly earlier. It's like, no, I'm going to sit here. I don't know what to do. He is pinned back. I'm not sure. Now, this moment here, he's coming in from the side. That's what I've just said. But guess what? Down comes the hand again. It's like engagement. He's like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And now he's chosen to exit again. So anyway, there's just a couple of little videos. Have I finished with that? I can't remember. Yes. They're just some examples, that's all. But some of you have heard me talk about this stuff with bigger, with more video. I just want to give you this notion of processing, engagement, exit. Think about those three words. What I feel with those three words, it breaks down our observations even more for us. It's not just, is this dog over threshold? Is this dog stressed? Is this, those kind of things? It's more nuanced than that. How does this dog need to process? What does that process? How does the dog need to process? In what context? Sure, the wonderful Laura Donaldson talks a lot about cognitive reappraisal for dogs, the ability for them to go through a format of reappraising that kind of situation. Engagement preferences, what are they? And if the dog does seem that they want to engage, and a lot of the dogs I work with, when we get to the point that the dog seems to be wanting to engagement, it's interesting to know on what terms that engagement might be. These are things that we can help set up for the future, especially when we're doing things like say hi training. And then exits, a lot of dogs really value knowing they have an exit. And often they can exit, but it's the perception of a lack of exit. Same with us humans. A lot of dissociative stuff actually is a perception of no exit, or not feeling confident enough to have an exit, or not believing ourselves that we could have one mentally, emotionally, socially, or other. When we learn more about processing preferences, engagement preferences, exit preferences, if we are going to start reinforcing behaviors, then it's better to support behaviors that we've learned already are intrinsically valuable. Many of these dogs, they just really want to feel they can exit, and they feel they can't. And actually, by supporting in safety cues, exit cues, whatever you want to call them, the dog's like, yeah, and that's the relief. It's like, oh, that's a relief. Yeah, I don't have to deal with that right now. And some of that exit has to be quite big initially, but it can get smaller and smaller, because when the brain believes I can signal it, and they really have that connection. In humans terms, it's emotional relevancy, as we call it. So that's how relevant you are to somebody emotionally. And now what that means is, I use my Auntie Mary, Uncle Bob thing here. So Auntie Mary, Uncle Bob, you love them both equally, you trust them equally, you respect them equally. But when you are feeling stressed, Auntie Mary kind of knows, right? She kind of knows it, and the thing she says gives you relief. She helps you out. Uncle Bob, not so much. So if you're in a stressful situation with Uncle Bob, despite his best efforts, you're probably not even listening to him, because he's not emotionally relevant. And I think we have to think about that with doggies. I got it down the seafront recently. There's two ladies with their little doggies. Two doggies were both swearing at each other, and they were both sharing stories about their dogs. Just stuck in situ, no exit. When we think about engagement is also the choices we make regarding what engagement should be. And some of these dogs, of course, they're choosing quite agonistic, negative engagement, and they're definitely presuming that that's what it's going to be. By the way, our history of engagements and exits feeds back into processing for next time, right? If you have a neutral thing that you're not either end or either side about it, if that engagement with that thing turns out to be not very pleasant, or you struggle to find an exit, then that will affect your processing of that for next time, and vice versa. So anyway, there you go. So I'm hoping that's given us some things to think about when we think about safety, when we think about the parts of what it is to feel safe. Feeling safe is feeling you have the time to process the stuff you need to do, and that you can engage on terms that feel right for you, and that you can exit when you can. The more resilient we are, the more negotiated that can be. So if I came into your house, you're my client, and I came in to see you, and I'm like, hey, and gave you a big hug and kissed you on the forehead, right? That level of engagement for you, which you didn't have any kind of agency on, it will be dependent on whether you are minded to think, well, he's a bit odd, but he's here to see my dog, and maybe he's just very friendly, or you might be deeply traumatized by that and think that is absolutely not right. So all these things are important for us, and the more we have to think about what we're learning from the dog through really good observations. If I've got a dog that I'm working with, any clients in here will know this, if they don't like whatever it is, that's not the first thing I want to think about. I want to think, okay, if a dog, for example, doesn't like dogs, that's fine. But if we don't see everything as a chance for observation, we're missing a richness about their fuller story. How does that dog process me? How does the dog process the environment? How does the dog process the caregivers? How does that dog deal with mild stressors? What does that dog's engagement preferences look like, even with the caregivers? What does that dog's exit preferences look like, even with the caregivers? There's a story there that we can learn about that really helps us to understand how this dog needs to navigate. And I wanted to share Molly's video. I've got lots of them on Molly. But just to show that even at 16, 17 weeks old, the dog is still able to tell us stuff. There's another video of me with Molly with the traffic. We found a safe space to be there, and she starts off, I sat on the grass with her, and she's pushing right into me because she needs that security, but her nose is twitching. She's on a long line. She could choose to exit, but she's choosing to be with me. That's great. And then as that video in real time goes on, she moves away from me a little bit. She's a little bit interested in stuff over there, but then comes back to safety. And we did that quite a few times until eventually she's like, what's going on? This is boring. I've processed all that now. That's fine. Doesn't bother me. This is just me sitting on the grass with you. So it's just how we think about stuff. Anyway, thank you very much. Sorry if I was a bit waffly than normal, but that's just because I'm not feeling quite full Andy. Really appreciate everybody who kind of shares in the group. It's a great space. Thanks to everybody in the group, really. It's a great space for us to learn from each other. I learn a huge amount from the contributions of people in the group. And that's not just professionals, it's caregivers as well. And I really value this space for us all to kind of keep learning and just keep thinking about things. That's all I want to do. All the stuff I've talked about tonight and other stuff, it's not, this is what you do. It's just, let's think about some stuff. And thank you very much. We've got Robert Faulkner-Taylor in. I think it's the 4th. I can't remember. Let me have a quick look here, actually, before I go. I'm going to pick my husband up, but he can wait. This is a patient man. Yeah, we've got Robin on Sunday the 4th. I can't stress this enough. That's 6:30. That's going to be an amazing conversation. We've got Matt Beisner in the following Wednesday. He's going to be talking about deep relationships. We've got Rachel Michaud. Sorry, Rachel. On the Saturday the 10th. Now, Rachel is an attachment specialist. She's a clinical psychologist dealing in attachment with children on a very high level, but who has, through her own dog, recognized, where's the differences? There are none. And she's so fascinating, and I love her. We had an amazing conversation today, and I can't wait to bring that to the group, because it's going to take attachment to another level, because I think this is something we need to think about very much. We've got the wonderful Mayor Rose coming in on Monday the 12th. Mayor and I are good buddies, and Mayor's going to be sharing her new outlook on a few things in the group. We've got Victoria Cooper on the 18th talking about her wonderful work, and especially with doodles and other amazing people. There's just a lot of stuff coming up. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Have a good night, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Stay safe. And speak to you soon. Lots of love. Bye.